He says, I have a reliable plan for healthy eating with a sensible calorie deficit, but would like your advice regarding if there is a specific style or styles of workout that will enhance weight loss without putting too much stress on my body overall. Sweet spot, endurance, over-unders, etc.
This often comes down to, as is so often the case, how much time do you have to simultaneously address fat loss and performance improvement? And I say simultaneously because I don't think there are too many of us who want to entirely dedicate our time just to fat loss. And if we're going to do that, there are so many ways we can go about it. But we're talking about doing it on the bike. So why not also chase improvement at the same time? Because the two can be coupled together quite effectively. So the patent logic is that if you have long hours, you do long, slow distance. If you're time constrained, you do high intensity interval training. You have to make the most of that minimized time. And these bear out, but I don't think they apply to most of us. I think most of us find ourselves in this, roughly 5 to 10 hours per week available training time. And that opens us up to a lot of options. Some we've discussed before, some perhaps not, and one we definitely have not because it's a very new study. So one of my suggestions, or the first of which, is 2-a-days. Anytime you can get yourself on the bike a second time in the same day at low intensity can do wonders in terms of shaping your body composition. And that can be a ride done prior to your intervals work, or it can be a ride done later in the day. It doesn't matter, but keep fat burning as the focus. Don't do these low intensity rides and slam a Gatorade. Okay, you probably don't need anything, assuming you had a good lunch and you're going to have a good dinner. Then there's fasted rides, and typically with fasted rides, they're limited. They're either limited in that they have to be short or they have to be very slow, and it makes sense in both ends of these things. Unless you're a fat adapted athlete, that's a whole other conversation. And they're quite good at burning fat, but they don't elicit a big training stimulus. I mean, they do, but they limit what you can do with the rest of that workout. It's kind of that one thing. But a recent study, very recent study, surfaced 2020, and it broaches the whole idea of delayed carbohydrate feeding during exercise. It's by Tim Podlegar, and I'm really hoping we're going to get Tim on our podcast because, man, do I have some questions. And it's very,
please, Tim.
It's very
Tim,
exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we're
going to be reaching out.
What else can we say to have you on the podcast? You're great. You're wonderful. Sure. Studies are
Please
great.
Please come talk to us. Many questions.
Yes.
Okay, so what he showed with this study was that carbohydrate can be added well into a workout without decreasing the fat utilization that we seek by doing a fasted ride and by doing low intensity work. He actually had athletes do a sleep low. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The sleep low idea plus training actually enhances our signaling for aerobic adaptation and fat metabolism. We've talked about that many times. This is what we're after. And then training high allows greater work capacity so that we can deliver that really potent training stimulus. He showed us that we can actually have the best of both worlds by simply delaying carbohydrate intake, in the case of this study, 30 minutes into the workout, and that it didn't impede the fat metabolism that was already taking place, even though now we're ingesting sugar. So we just talked last week about how as soon as you dump sugar into the system, fat metabolism turns off. Well, not in this case, not 30 minutes in, it kept on going. And what was really interesting, and maybe a little more on the sciencey side of things, is that the non-esterified fatty acids, so the little fatty acids that are floating around in your bloodstream that can make it into the mitochondria, that can produce all that energy, actually decreased. They went down, yet fat metabolism increased. And the speculation there is that the athletes were using their intramuscular triglyceride stores, those intramuscular fat stores. Yeah. So if I'm interpreting this right, which is why we absolutely have to have him on the Science of Getting Faster podcast, because, man, this is some interesting information from a kilojoules, or, more likely a kilocalories, a calories perspective. Sweet spot training is pretty much king because you can do a ton of it. It doesn't run you into the ground, and it is a big burner. That much is true, but it's a burner in the moment. Past the moments, I'm not entirely sure. This is something I want to dig into a bit more, but when we're talking about the remaining 23 hours of the day where we're trying to keep that engine revved, what impact does sweet spot have? And I'm sure it has some, but it doesn't have as much as some alternatives. So another thing to consider is an acronym. I'm going to throw a couple at you here: NEAT and EPOC. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So let's just call it the stuff you're doing when you're not exercising, the activity that you're doing when you're not exercising. And then EPOC is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So what you do during the workout affects this oxygen consumption post-workout and jacks up that energy utilization. I want to get away from the term burning calories because it's too simplistic, it's too reductive. Let's look at greater energy utilization. Doesn't matter where it's coming from, doesn't matter what its caloric toll is. We're using more energy. This will, over time, affect our body composition, assuming we're not compensating with eating a bunch more. So the gist of this is that at least with the NEAT, we're looking at our non-exercise activity, and that means that you can't discount the effect of all the other general activity that you do over the course of the rest of the day. And I think it's an easy trap to fall into, where we got ourselves during a workout, we're very tired, we have our recovery shake, and then maybe a little while later we have our meal, and then we use that as the excuse to do nothing for the rest of the day. And this might make sense in the context of an elite athlete or professional athlete. Maybe they can get away with it, but most of us don't have to recover that hard. We can still do things over the rest of the day. And those things, even if it's just walking to the store instead of driving to the store, it doesn't have to be a ton of work, and it doesn't necessarily fly in the face of everything you're going to achieve by sitting on the couch. You can still recover quite well and remain a little bit active and increase your energy expenditure. Then when it comes to that post-workout EPOC, there has been, well, two things elevated, and it's either duration or intensity. And ideally it's a combination of the two. So you do a hard workout, but you tack on a couple extra intervals, can have a surprisingly high impact. And there have been studies which show elevations in this excess oxygen consumption lasting as long as 72 hours post-workout. More commonly, I see it lasting 24 to 36 hours, but in either case, that's a heck of a lot of extra time where you're burning, marginally more, but still more energy over the remainder of, up to 3 days potentially. And what's taking place, some of the things that are taking place, is the replenishment of fuel stores. Metabolism of lactate takes energy. You do a big workout and you got high levels of lactate. As you finish that workout, that lactate's gotta go somewhere. It's gotta be processed. Your body temperature's up, your ventilation, your heart rate, your circulation are all increased. There's hormonal and enzymatic fluxes taking place. These utilize energy. And there's muscle synthesis and repair. If it's a really hard workout or a really long workout, there's a fair amount of resynthesis and reparation going on. All of this falls under the umbrella of recovery and adaptation. So again, when people talk about, how should I nourish on a recovery day because I'm not doing anything? Well, do keep in mind that you are doing something. You're recovering, your body's adapting. You have to fuel that process. You can't just starve yourself because there isn't a workout on the calendar. So when it comes to elevating this excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, EPOC, the two big hitters are strength training and high intensity intervals. And when I talk about HIIT, I'm talking about VO2 max intervals, anaerobic, and sprint training. Hard stuff. Sweet spot doesn't qualify. Sweet spot is hard and it is a big burner in the moment, but it doesn't carry the same impact on this excess oxygen consumption. And what happens when we elevate this EPOC is we're increasing our beta oxidation, or our fat metabolism. And we're just seeing greater metabolic activity all day, every day that we, manage to ramp those things up. And then sometimes in the case of a single hard workout, that can carry a day or two, or supposedly even 3. Both lead to the highest pound for pound transient bumps in this EPOC too. They take a big toll in the moment and then they keep on giving. And lately, as I've been doing only sweet spot, right? And I've actually noticed unfavorable changes in my body composition. It was getting a little discouraging. It's like, man, what happened? What is happening? I am doing so much work. I think I'm matching my calories closely enough, maybe even being a little on the lower side of things. I should be looking better, and I'm looking fluffier, as I've been trying to put it without being too critical of myself. And so I realized I had gotten away from strength training. I probably hadn't lifted weights but maybe 2 times over the course of a month. And that was a staple of my training diet that was giving me the body and the composition and even the feeling, the general feeling that I wanted so desperately. So I added a maintenance training back into my plan, and I'm doing it on days. I'm experimenting a bit. I'll talk about it later when I feel like I've got a better handle on it, but it's a simple routine. Doesn't take me any more than 30 minutes. And it's already having an impact. If for no other reason, if no other impact than psychologically, when I get on bike to do sweet spot, I don't feel like it's the only thing I'm doing, and my body's going to continue to get fluffier. So what I'm asking, it's not fat exactly. It's just fluffy, puffy. It's not a good look.
So dark and so fluffy. I'm getting a
That's
flashback.
right. Oh, I like that word.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Moving on from that, Amber.
Okay.
That never happened.
So what
never
I'm asking you, Stephen, and everyone else who's concerned with body composition changes and fat loss to do a few things. One is look past the caloric expenditure that's taking place during the workout as though it's the only variable, because there are many others. Look past the notion that fat metabolism only takes place during low intensity riding, because it takes place during everything, and it even takes place after the fact if you really push yourself during the workout itself. And then consider the energy expenditure expended during the rest of the day. Consider what happens after the workout. Consider this non-exercise activity. Consider what goes on in those remaining 23 hours of the day.
Definitely. And this might be a good time to also reiterate, the original question was what type of training, what type of workout is going to lead to, promote weight loss the most. And I would just, whatever it is that you're going to stick with too, right? So
yeah.
If there's a particular type of workout that just feels feasible and that's the one that you feel like you could be really consistent with, consistency is probably, it might, it's probably as important as the type of workout that you're doing. So if you're just, to Chad's point about the calorie or the energy consumption throughout the course of an entire day, just making sure that you're moving your body in a consistent way, even if it's, I'm going to do air quotes, just getting into an active recovery or an endurance zone, just that movement, just elevating your heart rate, just getting those systems online for however long that you do is going to be beneficial. So if you can do that really consistently, that's another thing to consider as well.
Absolutely. And I've discussed numerous types of workouts. I like a blend of all of them. And my training plans will show you exactly that. I mean, save for maybe the high volume sweet spot base plan, all the workouts are a really healthy blend of all of the things I just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard that question going on in someone's mind somewhere around the world of like, okay, so then I should just do sweet spot all the time, but then I should finish with VO2 because that's going to ramp me up for the rest of the time. And if you keep and go ahead and give that a shot, tell me how it works. When you get 3 weeks into a loading cycle and then you try to do that, it'll be really tough. So that's why you'll see like a lot of variation is you follow the training process and you're consistent. Your body will change to be what it needs to be. And I think that that's a really important thing, as long as you're being sensible, right? And what that means is not doing crazy crash diets, so to speak. That doesn't mean just because you're spending time on the bike that you can eat whatever you want, right? It's moderation and restraint, but it's also certainly not putting yourself in a position where you're deprived. And it's just making sure that you're allowing yourself to do the sort of work that you need to do. Consistency so far has been the theme of what we've been talking about on this podcast. Like consistency with training brings about so many benefits. And one of them in this very situation, Stephen, I think that this is the best way forward. I know there are many way forwards with weight loss, but to me, consistently following the plan will yield the best, most reliable benefits that you can count on, and the healthiest ones. And it'll probably be the way to get there with the least amount of stress too.
Definitely. And I think toward building consistency, think of it in terms of creating habits and not rules. Because when you start to create rules for yourself, and I see this happen all of the time with athletes, especially when you're thinking about body image or weight loss, people tend to create rules in their mind about what they can and can't eat, what they should and should not do on the bike, and how many workouts they have to do and how much TSS. So instead of creating rules for yourself, create habits. And part of the reason for that is rules are really rigid. They tend to promote stress, right? Because if you have a rule, then sometimes like the rule is I have to work out every day, as an example. Then if you break your rule, the stress of having broken the rule, the stress of having missed that workout can actually be more detrimental than whatever training adaptations you may have foregone by missing that session. So the rigidity of the rules can actually promote stress, which is, going to contribute to the success of and progress toward your goals. And they just don't allow as much buffer for what we know to be true, which is that life happens. So when you build habits, and maybe let's say your habit is, I'm just going to swing my leg over the top tube every day. So maybe you start the workout and it gives you the buffer to say, today's been a really stressful day. I'm going to go for active recovery. Okay, at least you're still getting on the bike and you're getting something done, right? You're moving your body in some way. Then it's easier to stay on track, and it's less stressful when things don't go as planned. And then you just feel like you can adapt more readily and more with more resilience. There's just more resilience built into that system. So think about it in terms of building new habits rather than creating rules that you don't want to break.
Hey, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Pete.
And if you like this video, you should subscribe to our channel because there's a lot more where that came from. And you can give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, if there's something you didn't like, give it a thumbs down. And if you would have done something differently, let us know in the comments below.
Absolutely. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, you should head over to TrainerRoad.com. It works. That's how Pete's fast.
Yeah, 100%.